everybody, Dave here. We've got a special request video. This is a Shimano Bantam Coriolis. This is it's a CO-100 is the model number. One of my subscribers said he would like to see a teardown service maintenance video on this reel. There isn't one posted online. I said, well, it's a pretty popular reel. You should probably check all the normal usual sources and Second Chance Tackle and TSG, and it turns out he's right, there isn't one. So he asked if I could do it. I said I'll put it on the list, and today's that day. Now I've actually already serviced this one because I had it posted actually for sale on Facebook Marketplace, and did my normal 20-second clip on YouTube, and but I thought we could go a little further today and show the whole process. It's a generic process for the most part. Every reel always has its own uniquenesses, but this should apply to just about any baitcaster from this era. And there's a few unique things about this one, and we'll point those out as we go through. So have a look. Okay, let's begin. We'll start with the handle. And we've just got the nut cover, single screw, take that off. Okay, nut cover's off. Let's take this nut off. This assembly is under some pretty significant tension, so be careful when you pull this nut off, because you'll have a bunch of parts go flying and you won't be happy if you haven't seen it. So I'm holding the star adjuster down, you pull the handle off. Then we have a little spring washer, a couple of filler washers under the star adjuster, and this is now spring loaded by a spring on the main shaft. So be careful when you take this apart. So there we've got the two filler washers, this metal washer, we've got the spring, and then we have this square nut. And that's important when you go to put the whole thing back together, how much you have that. If you over tighten that nut, you'll have a problem. So you can use the star adjuster to help back it off if it's particularly tight. Go ahead and spin that off. All right, you're getting to a couple of crucial steps now. So we've taken the star adjuster off. I'll leave all these parts here so you can remind yourself of what we've done so far. You can pull this little bearing cap, and there's a spring and a shaft spacer under there. So keep those two together. I'm just going to put them all back together here. And now the Shimano's, in this case, has these three finger screws. So you can use your standard fingers to pull those. Now we're not taking it apart yet, but we've got all three of those screws are now loosened. So you can pull on them and you see they're not threaded into anything. Then we've got 1, 2, 3 more Phillips screws holding everything together. So at this point, I'm going to go vertical and just start removing those screws one at a time. One. Try to turn this around so you might be able to see a little better. All right, that one's on the floor. We'll get that in a minute. And number 3. Try to keep my floor clean just in case of items like that, so it's easy to find. So you've got 3 of them that are loose and out. 2 out on the bench, 1 on the floor. So we're now ready to lift up the cover here. And now you can see the cover starting to come off. Let's just go straight up with that. There it is. Now, this is a very tricky little reel. I'm going to turn this over, and I want you to notice this spring right here. This little spring is engaged with this gray plastic lever here. One end of the tag of the spring is in a seat, in a hole in that adjusting arm, and the other end goes into this hole right here. There's a little bushing in this the jack. This is the jack that lifts this cross arm up and down and puts you in engage mode or not engage mode. That's a key item right there. If you're having a problem with this reel, there's a 99% chance you have not got this tag end of this spring into that hole. It's easy to take it out. It's not so easy to put it back in. That's probably the most difficult part of this reel. Everything else is pretty straightforward. So let's go a little further. I'm going to set this down. We do have a little bushing here. Underneath that, we have a couple of, there's a wave washer here. That's a drag tension washer. Then another flat washer, and then your drag stack. So if you needed to go in and service the drag stack, you do need to pull those other washers off. So let's do that. Keep them stacked up with each other so we know the correct order. Also be careful. It's also one thing that happens frequently is that these little compression springs that are on this cross piece can go flying. So make sure you keep those springs together. So you've got the pinion gear, the main gear, this cross piece, and then this is your disengagement engagement for your free spool and your free spool release. Over on this side, you have anti-reverse dog, which engages with the little shaft there. I think you can see that. That you want to make sure is free. You want to make sure this piece is free and not gummed up. It looks like I didn't do a very good job cleaning that. I see a little corrosion on there, so we're going to hit that with maybe a little oil. You could take it off and clean it. I don't see the need to do that right now. We'll just make sure it's properly lubricated. You do have a brass spur gear under here, which is part of the cross wind, the level wind feature. So if you were to go ahead and you can see how that anti-reverse dog works. I go forward, it pulls away. I go backwards, it engages. So right here, just watch this, how this works, right? Pretty straightforward. Underneath, it is under that paw and dog assembly for the anti-reverse, there is a plastic gear, so you don't necessarily need to get in there and service that. You'll want to make sure that you don't have any grime or dirt buildup in this area, that the jack is working freely and moving freely up and down. You'll want to go ahead and grease put appropriate fishing reel grease onto the main gear. You want to use just lubricant on these areas, fishing reel oil. You want to make sure this is all moving freely. So if this is not moving freely, you'll have a problem either with the engage or the disengagement. So, take the little thumb button, go back and forth, make sure everything's moving, no issues. And if that's looking good, you can take this out if you need to. And the button itself, there's a little slot in the bottom where that rides, and then it catches this lever right here. Fairly straightforward. Up, down. Not much else to it. And there is a spring. There is a spring right here. You can see that. That provides the back tension on the free spool casting button. Make sure that's in place. One end goes around the post, the other end goes into this small little hole right there. All right, other than that, it's all pretty straightforward. Well, let's take the drag out. You may want to see under there. Fairly straightforward drag assembly. Most bait casters are fairly simplistic in this respect. So, not much to see here. Drag washer, cap washer. Not a good idea to start turning this upside down right now, because if you're unfamiliar with what's in here, because it's pretty easy to lose track of what goes where. So right now, I would suggest, if you're just doing a basic service, stop here. There's really no other serviceable parts on this side where the magnetic brake is. So don't bother messing with it. So we're going to put these back together. Got the round washer, the bevel washer, and then the spacer. That goes there. At this point, we can put this back together. And as I mentioned before, this is where you really got to watch yourself. Oh, yes. The bearing in the case should be oiled. So this is the most difficult part of this reassembly. And we've looked at the three pieces that you have to put together. We've got that little pivoting lever. We've got the spring, and then that's got to go into that brass bushing. So the way you want to put this together is to put it together on the case like this. So let's make sure we get the two tag ends of the spring in their hole in the gray piece, and then correspondingly we want to go into the little brass bushing here on this white piece. So let's get that. If you don't have that, you're not going anywhere. Gotta flip this around. Make sure, try to make it so you can see it. Okay, so there you can see the general arrangement. I'll put it in the different positions. Tag end, spring. Now let me get my pointer. Tag ends coming up into this gray piece. Tag end going down into the brass insert bushing there. Now, the actuator is going to ride right here. So now we should be able to drop our thumb screws in. Get everything to line up. Close it up. There it is. Let's make sure we've got that right. Free spool release. There it is. That's the key with this reel, is making sure that you have both ends of those, that tag ends of that spring in the gray piece in the main plastic assembly before you try to put the case on. If you try it any other way, you're going to be here a while. You can do it, but trust me, I've done it a few times, and I did a reel like this a couple years ago, and I forgot that's how you did it. But I will remember from now on. All right, so let's put our screws back together. We'll get everything reassembled and give it a spin. The entire fish saver feature, I think they call it fish saver, of this reel is interesting. I'm not sure how necessary it is, but it's an interesting feature. A lot of baitcasters don't have it, but it essentially allows you to do some back pedaling like you would if you turned off the anti-reverse on a spinning reel. And maybe there's a good reason why you want to do that. Last screw. All right. Let's put our spool bearing cap back on. Okay, then let's put our star adjuster spring first. Whoop. Not spring first, nut first, square nut. You need to snug the square nut up against, without cross-threading it. You need to snug that square nut up against the bearing. No need for a wrench. Snug it up, make sure everything feels nice and free. That's good. Then spring. Star adjuster, plastic washer 1, plastic washer 2, keyed metal washer, handle. Just keep it compressed, and then final nut for the handle. All right. All right, tightened up. There it is. That's your free spool, and when you rotate the handle, you come out of free spool. Fish saver. Fish saver off. You know, interesting feature. Not sure how necessary it is, but so be it. I like this reel. It's actually very well made. Just has some extra features. Extra features are tend to lead to complication. Complication leads to more failures, of course, more parts to fail, and then, of course, that makes it more difficult to service as well. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, got something out of it. Put the nut cap back on. And this one will go back on the rack for sale.